All right, guys. So, like many of you, I just finished watching President Trump's speech at CPAC. And this is my raw initial reaction to what he said, which was highly anticipated, right? I mean, it started pretty late. And about after an hour waiting, I was like, all right, come on now. Like, when he going to come out and speak? But he finally came out and spoke. And, he came out in a very Trump-like fashion. First thing he said was, did you guys miss me? Right? And again, he's 100% right on that because this was very anticipated. It was like waiting for a State of the Union address. And that's kind of what it felt like. And I think that it's pretty impressive that the president still demands that type of presence, right? Even not being in office where people are paying attention to a speech like this as if, again, he is addressing the nation because he kind of is. And with that being said, I think that these periodic speeches, right, in conferences are a good idea for relevance moving forward into 2024 and 2022, right? I think every quarter Trump should come out and basically state his piece against Biden and the administration in terms of what they're doing, right? And I think him doing that will keep that presidential aura around him. Okay, so I kind of like the idea of doing this every now and then. So in terms of what he actually said, now, the first thing he kind of said was that they're not starting a new party. So he put that rumor to rest. And guys, I've speculated about this a lot on my channel in terms of him starting a new party. I've always said that he shouldn't, but it's definitely something he should use as leverage during the impeachment process to basically warn the Republicans, hey, listen, if you guys choose to convict, then, I might start my own party and we'll just destroy the GOP forever, right? I mean, that's just leverage, right? And lo and behold, there were rumors about him wanting to start it, which I think did come from the Trump administration. And I think they were using that as leverage. Now that the impeachment thing is done, that's no longer needed. Trump dispels rumors, says no new party, right? And throughout the beginning of this speech, he spent a lot of time on the Biden administration. I mean, he hammered Joe on issue after issue after issue after issue. Okay, I mean, he basically said it was the worst administration ever. He really hammered Joe on immigration policy and the border policy, right? Like, he was talking about how the immigrants that were coming up to the border were taking advantage of Joe Biden's words that he had said on the campaign trail, which is 100% true because, I mean, there's interviews and footage from these migrants basically saying we're coming because Joe Biden promised that he was going to let us in, right? And, Trump coming out here and really hammering that was perfect, right? That was a great way to start off the attack. Now, a lot of liberals going to say, well, Trump's being a bigot. He's doing the same thing he did in 2015 in regards to trying to scare people about immigrants. I mean, at the end of the day, Biden's giving them the ammunition on this, okay? Because the things that Biden said, I mean, the man's not lying, right? In terms of Biden's border policy and his deportation policy. Okay, and also Biden's policy on the wall. Biden's openly be like, I'm not finishing the wall. So obviously the wall was a big campaign promise from Trump. So obviously Trump's going to hammer him on that, along with the fact that Biden appears to be soft on immigration, right? And he's basically said that Biden's policies are America last. And then he went into other policies like, the Biden administration being bought and sold by teachers unions, right? How, the Biden administration is not putting kids back in school because of those teachers unions. Okay. And I think these are very, very powerful talking points that the president used that is true about the Biden administration. Okay. So he really, really hammered them on this. And I love this next part where then he went into the vaccines. And I think that this is where Trump really shined because, guys, I mean, listen, I know how a lot of you guys feel about COVID and the vaccines, right? But I'm thinking like a political strategist, okay? I'm not thinking like the normal everyday person in terms of how I feel about COVID and the vaccines, okay? Trump going out there and basically saying, I take credit for where we're at with the vaccinations and the COVID progress. I did all this, right? It was Operation Warp Speed. My administration believed the science and did what we had to do to fight this virus. That is a winning talking point when you're talking about trying to win over moderates, right? And even some on the left. Okay, so I love when Trump talked about the vaccines and the virus and taking credit, right? Talking about the numbers, talking about how many vaccinations was done before Biden even got in office. And then Biden comes into office and, as Trump states, right, is acting like Trump had no plan, right? In which Trump made a funny comment. He basically said that Biden had no idea what the hell is going on, so he doesn't really blame Biden for knowing, right? Which I think is funny because it basically pokes fun at Biden's mental deficiencies at this point. So I think probably Trump's best part of this whole thing was him talking about the vaccines and taking credit for that, as he should, okay? Because that's a winning issue for him, okay? And then he started to talk about the endless wars, right? He started to talk about peace in the Middle East, the peace deals that he did. He talked about the Paris Climate Accords and energy independence. He also talked about gas prices going up, which basically really have started going up since the election. Now, realistically, is it Joe Biden's fault that gas prices are going up? Probably not, right? The oil markets are somewhat independent of what the president does for the most part. But at the same time, in terms of people actually hearing what he's saying and winning over people, hey, he got a point. Gas prices have started going up since the election and under Joe Biden. So who knows? I mean, I was listening to an analyst the other day talk about how oil might get back to $100 a barrel, right? So Trump spent a lot of time on that. He also talked about Biden's gender policy and them pushing the Equality Act. I think that's HR 1. He talked about how that discriminates against young women. Again, a winning talking point for him. And then he goes into the accomplishments of his administration, talk about the economy, talk about low unemployment for, black people, Hispanic people, basically touting the same accomplishments that he's been touting, since he's had those accomplishments, right? Then came an interesting part of the speech where Trump started to talk about Trumpism. Right, he started talking about what Trumpism is. And, this is actually pretty important because the Republican Party needs a policy platform. And I think that this is what Trump's version of the Republican Party platform is. Okay. And he talks about no riots, law and order, right? Supporting law enforcement, not defunding the police, having strong borders, strong Second Amendment policies, strong trade deals. Right, low taxes, lower regulations, strong military, taking care of vets, and Space Force. You guys know, I think Space Force is probably one of my favorite things that the Trump administration has done because I'm a big believer in investing in space. And I think having a military branch for space, I think is good for investment. I think it's good for innovation. So Trump gets a lot of hate for Space Force, but I actually think it was genius and I actually love that. He goes into talking about breaking up big tech monopolies, right? He talks about that policy, repealing Section 230. And then, towards the end of his speech, or really the middle of the speech, he starts to call out the establishment. And this is the part that everybody was waiting for, okay? Because he called out everybody who voted to impeach him in the House by name. I was actually pretty impressed with Trump's memory. I mean, I'm wondering, is this man reading from a teleprompter? Because I would have had the hardest time memorizing all those people's names, right? I mean, he was naming states they was from, things of that nature. I mean, that was pretty impressive for a guy that's 74 years old and really shows the difference between his current mental capabilities and that of Joe Biden, right? So Trump also talks about the division in the party, right? Whether he thinks that the party's divided. And he basically says, listen, we're not really divided except outside of a handful of people in Washington and in the establishment. And in that sense, guys, my opinion on it. I do think that the GOP is divided, but I do think that it is accurate to say that the divide is small in numbers. It's big in power, right? That's the crazy thing. It's big in power, but the divide is small in numbers in the sense that the people are behind Trump, right? And I think most of the politicians, at least for right now, are behind Trump. But I do think the power-hungry elite, those who really hold power in the Republican Party, that's what I call the establishment, are definitely against Trump, right? So there's definitely a divide there. Okay, so I think if you describe it as a power divide, I think that's probably a more accurate way to describe the division rather than just by sheer numbers, because obviously the state and local legislators are with Trump. I mean, if you speak out against Trump, you get censured by your state. So, the divide is really between the power in the party and the people, right? That's really what the divide has come between. So he talked about that. He also talked about how he's working on basically establishing his own infrastructure to run his own candidates, right? In which, I've seen news almost every day about how Trump has endorsed some candidate that's running against some candidate that voted to impeach him in the House, or the Senate. So, I think Trump really is serious about politics going forward, at least from what it sounds like in this speech. Okay. And, he also talked about how the Republicans have a bright future, right? And he cited the performance of Republicans in the last election as reason for why the Republicans can continue to win. Okay. He talked about how the Republicans outperformed in the House, right? And the Senate. Like I've told you guys, the Republicans did do very well in the House and the Senate elections, right? They performed better than expected, according to the polls, right? Which signals that, there is some strong Republican support that can win over the legislative branch in 2022. Then he briefly mentions Mitch McConnell. And this was weird to me because Mitch McConnell, right, has come out and basically advocated for the president being brought up on criminal charges and civil charges. And Trump responded by basically issuing a letter to the GOP that, for all intents and purposes, just straight up rips McConnell. Okay, so I'm expecting in this speech for Trump to rip McConnell, but it just never came. Trump just kind of talked about how he helped McConnell win, but he didn't really go all in on him the same way that he went all in on Biden. And that was a surprise to me. That was a surprise. 'Cause I'm thinking like, okay, this is where Trump really rips McConnell. He really goes after McConnell. He really goes after the establishment. But I think he avoided doing that because I think that he wants to unify the Republican Party. He knows that to a certain extent, he needs the establishment, right? And it's not bad to say that, guys. I mean, the establishment has the power. That's why they call the establishment, right? And Trump has to be smart and calculated and recognize that, okay, right, like ultimately at the end of the day, what's the goal? To win. I can't win by myself, and the establishment knows they can't win without me. So we have to come together and figure it out in order to actually win. So it doesn't really serve a good purpose to come out here and rip into the leader of the establishment, Mitch McConnell, after already ripping him, if the goal is to unify. Okay, so that's ultimately what I think Trump is thinking and why he didn't rip the Republicans, right? The establishment Republicans as much as I thought that he would. Okay. At least that would make sense logically, right? I hope that that's the way he was thinking on that. So in close, obviously everybody was wondering, is Trump running in 2024? Is he going to announce that he's running in 2024? And I told you guys, I don't think that Trump should announce that he's running in 2024. I told you guys that before this speech came up, right? When there was speculation that he would. And Trump did not officially announce his candidacy for 2024. He left it at a cliffhanger. Okay. He teased a lot. Okay. He teased a lot. He probably gave a lot of people in there blue balls. Right. So, he basically said that the Republicans will win in 2022 in the House and the Senate in 2024. A Republican is going to win the presidency, and that's the goal. And he said, I wonder who that may be. I wonder who that may be. Okay. And, this was probably the second time throughout the speech that he had actually teased running in 2024, but he really came up short of announcing it. And I think that that was the right move because he's not telling the established Republicans what his plans actually are. That way they have less time to plot against him if he does decide to run later on, right? Which I think is an excellent strategy. And I think it was wise for him to avoid an outright, declaration of a candidacy so early on, right? Don't get the establishment Republicans anything to work with, especially don't get the Democrats anything to work with, okay? Because as soon as the Democrats know that Trump is running 2024, they're going to start launching ads right? Already because they know that Trump will win, okay? So overall, I thought it was pretty good. I think Trump came out. He said what he needed to say. He went in on Biden. He touched on, his America first, and I guess Trumpism policies, right? And he talked about the Republican establishment, right? And then he left a cliffhanger for what's to come next from him, which I feel like is exactly what he should have done. So that's my instant reaction to this, guys. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know in the comment section. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.